My name is Ernest Lamoth. I'm a reporter for the Southland Journal.
My name is David Moore, and I'm a candidate for Secretary of State, currently the Alderman of the 17th Ward in Chicago.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about your overall career for people who may not know?
Absolutely. Career-wise, after graduating from West Illinois University in Macomb, I actually had two job offers before I graduated, one from Ralston Purina Company and one from State Farm. I had a dual degree in accounting and operations management. And so I took a position with Ralston Purina Company as a staff accountant. And I spent 10 years in the private sector as accountant, working for several Fortune 500 companies, including Ralston Purina Quad Cities, the Clorox Company in Bedford Park, and Avery Dennison Corporation. And so after that, I ended up coming to the Department of Aviation, getting into the public sector. After spending about 8 or 9 years in the private sector, I came over to the public sector as an accountant with the Department of Aviation. Stayed there for a couple of years before going over to the Chicago Housing Authority as a development manager for the Chicago Housing Authority before being promoted to senior advisor of operations. And so after then, I worked for the Board of Review of Tax Appeals under Commissioner Larry Rogers Jr. And then I ran for alderman of the 17th Ward, where I serve today in the communities of Inglewood, West Chatham, Auburn, Gresham, and Chicago Lawn.
Okay. And Alderman Moore, can you talk a little bit about what are some of the reasons why you decided you want to run for Secretary of State?
Absolutely. First of all, you'll hear me say there's two people who I keep my eyes on. Anyone who says they want to be a preacher and anyone who says they want to be an elected official, because it's not something you run to, it's something you run from. And it's a calling on your life. And that's what happened when I not only ran for alderman, but also this position as well. You don't want it. God calls you for it and you don't seek it. And it's about serving people. And so that's what initially got me into this race. But what attracts me to this seat is the same thing that attracts me to being an alderman of the 17th Ward. It's a nonpartisan seat. I tell people I hate politics, but I love public service. And so I get to serve people regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of even party. I get to serve everybody. And that's what attracts me to this Secretary of State seat, because it's a servant seat and should remain a servant seat. It hadn't always been a servant seat. I'm the only one in this race that back in 1997 circulated petitions for Secretary White to get him on the ballot and get him elected because of the fact that that seat had been marred in scandal and corruption. And I want to make sure that at least some seat in the state of Illinois is a servant seat and not a political seat. So that's what attracts me to that seat.
And what are some of the platforms that you're just in general passionate about?
Oh, absolutely. First and foremost, it goes starting, you'll hear me talk about the service of the Secretary of State, the business of the Secretary of State, and the responsibility of the Secretary of State. More than anything, this seat has to remain a servant seat. It has to remain an independent voice, not controlled by big money or not controlled by big politics. And so that's what's important, because you have to be, in order to do that, you have to be able to serve the people without bias and without influence. And so that's what's important to me, to make sure that that happens. Also, what's important to me is making sure that I use my skills and experience that I have as an accountant that I spent 10 years in a private sector for, is making sure that we run an effective and efficient operation. One of the things that people like is great customer service, but also as a fiscal agent, even when I was an accountant in corporate America, I want to make sure that we're not increasing those fees and that we're keeping those fees low. People are having enough hard time as it is. And we all know that there's waste in government, but there has to be the political will to identify that waste and to weed that waste out. And then that's from the business standpoint. And then from the responsibility standpoint, what's important to me and what I'm passionate about is our young people. I'm the first one in this race to say that of all our 122 driving facilities, that I'm going to create 122 youth engagement offices for our youth and young adults, and for that they can have internships so they can learn civic professional responsibility, because a lot of people just think about being an elected official. They don't know about all those middle management positions in government that's giving out contracts, that's making policy. And so I may want to make sure that there's equity in contracting, equity in hiring, and equity in providing services. So that's what's important and what's passionate to me.
Oh, wonderful. Is there anything else you'd like to add that maybe I didn't ask?
Yes, one of the things I tell people, because they have a lot of similarities between the candidates. You'll hear us talking about modernization. Everybody is modernizing. If you're not modernizing, what are you doing? You know, and so you'll hear a lot of those conversations, but there are differences between us, clear differences between us, and not so just from a policy and operation standpoint, but from an individual standpoint. And people have to ask those questions and make those clear. I tell people there's nothing wrong with being a millionaire. A lot of us want to, but guess what? That's not most Illinoisans, and I am them. Most people are, when they go to college, and I'm sure if you went to college or whatever school you went to, most people didn't get and have the political clout to get a legislative scholarship just given to you for 4 years because you were connected. You had to either work, get a student loan, or be an RA like I did, or all three like I did, really. And so that's what most Illinoisans do. I don't know if you ran for office, or when most people run for office, they have to run. They don't get appointed. It's the select few that get appointed. And that's the difference between me and the other candidates. I am battle tested and I am proven. And that's the difference. And so I am more what the majority of Illinoisans reflection of what more Illinoisans are.
Well, thank you very much for taking some of your time today.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate this opportunity.